Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am so excited to have Dr. Helena Popovic back with us. She has been on the show. This will be her third time, and we've been covering 3 different books that she's done. And today we're going to talk about how to care for yourself when you're caring for someone else, which can be a little tricky. And the book that we're going to be talking about is called NeuroSlimming. Let your brain change your body. And we'll get to the book towards the end. She is always filled with great tips. So don't think that you have to be overweight or struggling with something like that to get something out of this show, or that your person you're caring for, or really this book is good for anybody. She is filled with great tips and great insights in terms of how our brain works and how stress can affect us. So before I pull Dr. Helena in, I just want to recommend that you swing by alzheimerspeaks.com. Check out all of our free resources there. You will also find a connection to Dementia Map, which is our global resource directory on top of that, where we have over 150 categories that you can check out. And then I do want to give a shout out to a couple of support groups that I do. One is Arthur's Memory Cafe, which meets virtually, and anybody around the world can join us from 1 to 3 Central Time on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month. Another group I do is called Caregiver Connect, which is at the Shoreview Community Center the last Wednesday of the month from 10 to 11:30 Central Time. If you're interested in either of those, just ping me and I will get you information. Last, I want to give a shout out to Twiddle. If you're not familiar with Twiddle, they are a great sundowning tool to bring people comfort and reduce their anxiety. They also have a product called Adapt a Wrap, which is really helpful if you have somebody who disrobes, or maybe they just can't lift their arms up to get dressed or do different motions. So you can go to their website, which is the number 4, and then Twiddles, plural, TWIDDLES.com. Well, everybody, I'm excited. We have Dr. Helena Popovic back with us again, and this is session 3. She has just been absolutely incredible to talk to, so filled with knowledge. And today we are going to be talking about caring for yourself, one of those things that we miss a lot in the caring journey. And this is just so critically important. So, Helena, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure. I have spent the last few days exploring New York, and it's been amazing.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm glad that you are enjoying your trip to America here and checking us all out. She's been in the West Coast, in the middle, and now is in the East Coast, and then we'll be heading back to Australia tomorrow. So pretty adventurous here. Before we go down our line of questioning, let's have you tell people a little bit about yourself first, so that they have some background on you, because they might not have caught the other 2 shows, which they're going to want to go back and listen to after this one.
Well, I'm an Australian family doctor, and I was unexpectedly thrown into caring for my father for over 10 years after he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. And I was absolutely shocked at my lack of education about dementia, despite 10 years of medical school. So I then researched everything I could about the disease, and I've since written 3 books about how to boost our brain and defy dementia through education, not medication. And my first book is titled In Search of My Father. Dementia is no match for a daughter's determination. And you and I spoke about that book on Alzheimer Speaks Radio a few months ago. It outlines the first year of my caring journey and is an introduction to brain health, how to prevent dementia, and how to slow progression of the disease even after a diagnosis. And then, because readers were asking to know what happened next, I had to write a sequel. And that's titled, Can Adventure Prevent Dementia? A Guide to Outwitting Alzheimer's. Spoiler alert, adventure can prevent dementia. And that really, the feedback I've had from that is that it is the Bible of brain health because it covers all the very latest research in detail on how to boost our brain. And I guarantee if you read that book, you will more than halve your risk of ever getting dementia, and you can make a huge positive difference to anyone you might be caring for. And my third book, NeuroSlimming, Let Your Brain Change Your Body, is about how to shed excess body fat without dieting or deprivation. And that is relevant to carers because so many tell me, they're gaining weight because they don't have time to look after themselves. And so I think that's why it's a critical thing we need to talk about today. And that's what I do now. I spend all my time, I still see patients, but I spend more of my time speaking at live events or through Zoom or running webinars, just teaching people how to look after their brain, their body, how to live longer, stronger, healthier, and happier.
Wonderful. Thank you. That gives people just a great knowledge base for you. Can you add to that and let them know, like, when your journey with your dad started, and is that still going? Where are you at personally at this point?
My mother passed away in 2010 with lung cancer. And that's when that's when I took over caring for my father. And he passed away in 2019, just before COVID. And at the time I was obviously devastated. But here's the amazing thing. In all that time, he stayed pretty stable. He could still dress himself, feed himself. I mean, I gave him the choice of the clothes, but he could still toilet and shower and bathe himself. He still always recognized me and my partner. It was just his memory was just shot to pieces. But I was so grateful that we maintained that bond and that relationship and that love until his very last day. And he passed away peacefully in his sleep. And in retrospect, COVID would have made things so much harder. I just really feel for the people who had caregiving roles to family and friends during that time. It would have been super isolating and difficult.
Yeah, I'm grateful that both of my parents passed before then too, because I would not have coped well, and I would have been a bear and a half to the communities that my parents were in. I had one friend where her mom was on a second floor of a nursing home, and her brother, it drove him so crazy. He brought a couple of times an extension ladder and went up 2 flights, and
Wow.
the community never knew that
From the outside.
from the outside, so he could see his
Wow.
mom, and they could put hands up and try to talk through the window.
That's heartbreaking.
I know. I said, gosh, the community should have used that almost as a tool and gotten like a boom to raise people up. They could have gotten great media for still making connections and things like that. But yeah, it was devastating, which, rolls me into my first question. There is so much stress that can come with this caring journey that we're on. And I believe statistics are like 1 in 3 people are unpaid caregivers, care partners, care companions, carers, whatever you choose to call them. And when you take on this role, you typically don't give away other things that you're doing. It's an add-on. And, people feel it physically, mentally, emotionally, in every single way. And I believe in one of our other episodes, I talked about even myself, all of a sudden, I had asthma. All of a sudden, I had anxiety. I've never had any of those things. I was having stomach problems. It's like, what is going on? Is that pretty common that you see?
Absolutely, 100%. And my experience was the same as yours. I had never been sick until I started caring for my father. Never, ever. The odd sniffle, cough, or cold. but looking back, I can see, even though I didn't see it at the time, that I went through all the stages of stress that humans are biologically programmed to go through. And it actually starts with not all stress being bad. You know, in the initial stages of stress, when we face something that's unfamiliar or potentially difficult, we produce adrenaline. And adrenaline is the hormone that increases our focus, alertness, creativity, problem solving. So I went straight into fix it mode, and I love that. So, you know, I immediately drew up a care plan, which was consisted of a list of activities and dietary changes for Dad, and a list of the latest research papers about dementia for me. And it never occurred to me that Dad might not want to do all the brilliant brain boosting things I'd organised. And in the early days, having no experience in caregiving, I tried to coax and bargain and bribe him to do them. Like, I couldn't understand, why wouldn't you want to come for a walk with me? Why wouldn't you want to go to the gym to improve your cognition? Why wouldn't you want to attend a yoga class? Hey, let's do volunteering with Meals on Wheels. You have to swap your French fries for broccoli. Well, you can imagine how well that went down. And the more he resisted, the more I persisted. And the more I persisted, the more he resisted. And I was just creating more and more stress for myself. And that's actually typical of the first negative signs of stress. We get tunnel vision. We can't see beyond our own agenda. And we lose the capacity to see alternatives and other ways of doing things. So we start to feel stuck in a rut. And that then pushes people into anxiety, which you experienced, and hyperactivity, which I experienced. And at this point, we're ruled by another hormone, cortisol, and that impairs our functioning and our memory and weakens our immune system, which is why we both got sick. And sure enough, I ended up in hospital for the first time in my life as a patient on IV antibiotics because I developed cellulitis of my leg, which had swollen up to the size of a watermelon. And that was my wake-up call. Two big things. While I was lying in the hospital, I was thinking, well, I'm no good to my father if I'm in here. So the first thing that I resolved was that I would work with Dad and not against Dad. And secondly, I can't do it alone. I had to get other people involved with his care, and I had to learn to ask for help.
Well, you know, it's really interesting when you talked about being in the hospital. I never landed in the hospital, but I would get slammed down. I would get so sick where I was like bedbound for a week or two. Because I was so exhausted, and my body is like, hello, Puddinhead, you can't keep running at this pace. You know, you have to slow down, you have to rest. And when you were talking about, you know, lining all this stuff up for your dad, you're thinking, I would assume, because this is how my mind worked too, all the logical things to do.
Yes.
This is what it says, so let's just do it. Don't question it. And I didn't even realize some of that stuff I was doing because, and I really didn't analyze this till way after, because I didn't want to lose them.
That's exactly right.
And so to make me feel safe,
yes,
do this now. Do this with me, but just do it. And I didn't realize so much of it was really about my emotional state that I was ignoring. But I had it on the checklist for mom or dad. So then it was about mom or dad, and it really wasn't. And so that was kind of a fascinating thing to look back at in terms of the emotions.
And also I think it's my fear was, if he gets worse, I may not be able to look after him. If I can't fit, because he was a fit, strong man. If he can't shower and bathe himself, number one, he wouldn't have allowed me to do it anyway. Number two, if he became physically frail, I wouldn't have been physically capable of doing that. So I was also terrified that I wouldn't be able to look after him if he got any worse.
Yep. Yeah. And those are things that we don't say to one another. Usually there's spinning in our mind of what we're worrying about, and their mind is spinning with things like that too. And we're not really communicating. So I liked when you said you had the revelation of it. I'm going to work with Dad on this. And so to me, one of the biggest lessons that dementia taught me was to be authentic, to be open to change and live a fluid life.
Yes.
Because even if it goes on my routine that I think is perfect, we're going to hit a bump in the road. There's going to be a detour, and I need to not wig out on that.
Yes.
because then I switch up everything, and I'm pulling stress in to my parents' lives that they might not have even noticed, but they noticed it because of my reaction
Yes.
to it. And then all of a sudden we're all spinning and we're not communicating.
Yeah.
All of those types of things. I think there's so much that no one tells us when we start this journey
No.
of what to expect, or, even talking about quality of life, what does that mean to each of us?
And
How
it's
hard,
different to everyone.
yeah, and how hard do we want to work at something if we have a chronic illness, or
Mm.
some people are, I've had a good life and I'm not going to make those changes, and
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with this. And that can be really hard for other family and friend members to hear. But, we have to look at whose life is this
Yes.
as well. And like you said, trying to push something that they're going to fight isn't helping either of you in the level of stress. And that can push the disease further along for them
Yeah,
faster, and
that's
it
right.
can create disease for us,
Yes.
no matter how healthy we are. And again, something that's not openly talked about,
Mm.
or and you don't and when I don't know, I don't think most caregivers even think about those things.
No, I don't think so either. They're just so consumed with the day-to-day things that have to get done.
Yeah. And educating themselves of, like you said, what are the options? All of those things take, time,
Mm.
to investigate, and keeping up with the doctor's appointments. And I mean, there's that whole new level of stuff,
Mm.
figuring out sometimes the finances. I mean, it doesn't stop at just the medical side. You've got the
No.
emotional side, the spiritual side, the financial side, the physical side. I mean, it's endless. I mean, it
Yes.
really, really is. For you, do you think there are certain key factors that caregivers really have to notice so that they don't increase their stress levels, or they try to maintain their level of stress, might be a better way, because you're not going to get rid of it all?
No, you're not. I think the things that can increase caregiver stress are firstly trying to do it all and not seeking emotional and practical support, and not feeling that you should be managing better. Not real. I think the biggest thing is to being embarrassed, thinking, oh, people are going to think I'm not coping. I should be coping. But anyone who's done any caregiving knows that it's extremely hard work, rewarding and fulfilling as it might also be, but it can easily take over your life. And then people start to experience compassion fatigue, and then they feel guilty for feeling compassion fatigue, and then they feel overwhelmed and exhausted on a level they've never known before. And all this can creep up on a family caregiver without their realizing. And suddenly they feel alone and find themselves socially isolated because they become consumed with the caring role. And I know you've spoken about this, Laurie, that I think your friends kept asking you to go out with them for a coffee or a meal, and you kept saying that you didn't have the time. And then one of your friends dragged you out. And when you eventually did it, you felt so much better. And I think you even cried sort of with relief. Do I remember that correctly?
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. And it was something that I was going to go to every single week, because I didn't know how empty I had gotten.
Mm,
My soul was like sucked dry.
yeah.
And I didn't know that until I allowed my friends to fill me again. you know
Yes.
and it's kind of like, I kind of compare it to loneliness. Well, like when I sold real estate, I would have people living in a house. They'd been there 40, 50 years. The neighborhood had changed. They don't really know people. A lot of their friends are passing away. They don't really want to move out of their house, and they become isolated. They become alone. They start feeling not necessarily safe in their neighborhood because they're not
Mm,
as connected. I mean, there's all those types of things, but they don't realize it because it's happened so slowly over
yes.
time.
Yes.
And then when they actually move, you can't get a hold of them because they're not in their apartment, because they're socializing, because their soul needs that, and they didn't know how much they missed it. And I think that's kind of what happens with caregiving. You just, you get so focused on your to-do list and the tasks, and you try to attack that list in a logical fashion that says no time for
Yeah.
anything, especially you're not on the list, because the list is about somebody else. and we don't incorporate, kind of safety plugs for ourselves on that list, or most people don't. They don't protect that because they're too busy protecting somebody else.
When we become a caregiver, we become a caregiver for two people, the other person and ourselves. And people forget that, but you're caring for two, because if you're no good, as I said, when I landed in hospital, I was absolutely no good for him. And I think another factor that increases caregiver stress, especially with dementia, is grief at losing the person that your loved one used to be. In my case, I found it heartbreaking to see my hero, Dad, struggling to do the things he used to be able to do, that he simply couldn't anymore. Like, he was a real handyman. He could fix anything. And now to see his frustration that he'd lost those skills, it was just so sad and painful. And as you said, in many cases, caregiving also imposes a financial strain at having to cut down on paid work, or some people have to give up altogether if their loved one has progressed to the stage of needing 24-hour care and they don't want to put them in residential care. And also all the other things we touched on, with dementia especially, people feel out of their depth. They don't know where and how to ask for help because the medical system is still failing people with dementia and their care partners. We have to go out and do our own research to find what we need. And I was extremely fortunate to have found your podcast, Alzheimer Speaks Radio, and it gave me so much hope and support and strength. And just hearing other people's stories and learning about the things that were available and exploring Dementia Map, what you do is invaluable.
Well, thank you. Well, and again, I got into this because of experience. You got into this because of experience.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
You were a doctor to begin with, but you saw this gaping hole once it hit you personally. It's a
Yes.
whole different viewpoint. And that's one of the things that I love, is all the things that are being created out of passion and compassion,
Yes.
because people have walked the journey. And they approach things different because they know the pitfalls of all the stuff we don't talk about. They know that you can't just follow a logical, ABC thing, because there is going to be detours, and emotions are going to come into play, and family dynamics are going to come into play, and just outright exhaustion is going to come into play. Lack of sleep, change of routines. I mean, those things aren't in the normal routine of how we make up a list, and yet we're being bombarded by those things constantly. So how should caregivers try to find those things? I mean, reading your books and stuff definitely will help and stuff.
Yes.
But is there something that maybe triggers within them that they should sit down and just take a deep breath? Like, it sounds silly, but just recognizing that they're stressed.
I think the red flags that people should just be vigilant for are the feeling tired all the time. The other thing, just becoming impatient, snappy, angry, moody, snapping at the smallest inconvenience. And it's like, why am I so ratty? I'll give you an embarrassing example. We were doing the grocery shopping, and I always take my own bags because I don't want to use plastic bags because they are such a pollutant. And the person doing the checking out, the checkout person, didn't notice that I had my own bags, and I was a bit distracted, so I forgot to go around and put my bags there so I could pack my food. And by the time I noticed, she'd filled 2 plastic bags. Now, a normal person would have just said, oh, look, don't worry, I've got my own bags, keep the bags, I'll just transfer the food. I just went, I know this is so uncharacteristic, I just blew up at her. Can't you see I've got my own bags? I'm trying to save the environment. Bags are such trash. They pollute the environment. Don't you have to, you could have asked me. And my father was like, what is going on with, why are you? And, luckily within a few seconds, she just looked shocked. And I've just never exploded at someone like that, and I felt so embarrassed, and I caught myself and I apologized, and I thought, what is wrong with me? And that's stress, because we don't like to get angry, or we hold it all in with the person that we're caring for, because we want to maintain as much, calm and peace, and be the compassionate caregiver. But if we don't get in touch with how we're feeling, and then just go outside in the garden and feel the anger, feel the grief, feel the sadness, give ourselves stillness, then it's going to have to come out one way or another. And that's the worst place for it to come out, in a public place, where I just felt, so embarrassed.
Yep. And yet it's somebody you don't know. So it's kind of like, you could walk away, but the guilt, then
The guilt
afterwards, that adds on to the stress that you're feeling. And so it's just not a healthy release. I found for me, journaling helped.
Yes.
And I can look back at my journals, and I would do a lot at night in bed thinking, oh my gosh, I can't read any of this, but it still felt good.
Yes.
For me to get it out, because I knew what it said
Yes.
in the moment. And I even I have a burning bowl in my bedroom. So really it's like a cookie jar, but I put some sand and some rocks in it.
Oh, nice.
And so then I would write my intentions, or what I'm grateful for, or what I want, God or my higher power to take over, and I'll burn that at night. And then that just helps me sleep. And I thought, because I finally learned, okay, you're not Superwoman, you never have been, but you kind of put on that cape though, and you think, because I've always been capable of handling stuff. I mean, that's just my personality style. I'm, probably type A, and just one of those get her done. And it's just like, I can't control this. I can't fix it. All I can do is support it. And that was really hard for me to look inward to change and admit that. That was a really difficult thing. But that burning bowl and the gratitude journal, and just journaling, just acknowledging I am angry. I am angry at my siblings because I don't think they're stepping up. I'm exhausted. I'm upset something didn't go this way. But I would always try to end up with, what are 3 things that did go good that day?
Yes, that's right. And journaling is how my books came about.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of people. I've got some key stories that I still want to do another book with. And I've done them for keynotes and stuff, but I just haven't taken the time to put it together, because folks, I don't know if you know, but writing a book takes a lot of time and energy.
Yes.
A ton.
3 years for my second, for the sequel.
Yep. But I think they're very healing too. To get that stuff out, even if you write a book, even if it's just for yourself, or write in a journal. To me, I think part of that stress release, we really have to step up and talk about emotions instead of, be in control. You're not supposed to feel that way, or boys aren't supposed to cry, or girls aren't supposed to do this, whatever it might be. To me, those aren't healthy stigmas that are out there, or standards that we have. And for me, I really learned that I had to move through those. I couldn't stop them, or I would have more episodes like you in the grocery store with the bags. It would come out sideways.
Yes. And by the way, I've read Betty the Bald Chicken. I read it on the plane to New York. It was wonderful. It's beautiful, and I think every parent should read it to their child. It's just delightful.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Well, it's there's so much overlap when it comes to caring, and I think again it's so important for people to understand these stress triggers and things. We are going to take just a quick break here and learn about Q Blocks, which is now called Q for Good, which is a webmaster. And while we do that, feel free to go and check out her website. We've got all the show notes listed for you, but you can go to drhelenapopovic.com. You can go to her other website, which is adventurepreventsdementia.com. She is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, so very, very easy to get a hold of. Again, we're going to hear about Q for Good, which previously was Q Blocks, and we'll be right back. I also want to introduce you all to Q Blocks. They have been absolutely excellent to deal with. They have been in business for 18 years and they serve the globe. I can't say enough good things about this company. I've had a lot of bad experiences. I don't know about you with tech companies. They have made a very complicated process very easy. And their staff is so kind, so polite, so respectful to work with. And when I am frustrated and ready to pull my hair out, they just smile and tell me everything's going to be okay. And they really are just on top of the communication, which alleviates so much stress as an owner when you're dealing with tech issues. You can get a 10% discount. Visit them at Q Blocks, that's CUEBLOCKS.com, or you can email them at letstalk@qblocks.com. For that 10% discount, just put Lori, Lori, in the inquiry form. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I surely haven't been. I can't rave enough about this company. And that's kind of rare these days. One of the things that I think is on a lot of people's minds is when you are caring for someone else and you have these extra stress levels, does that increase the odds of dementia? You hear a lot of people talk about that because we're hearing more about lifestyle and now they're getting less sleep. They're not eating as well. Half the people don't go to their own medical appointments. I mean, we just kind of ignore ourselves and we focus on this is what they need to do, but we're not always incorporating ourselves into that equation. So
Yes.
I know there's a more likelihood of a care partner getting sick or even dying as well. So let's talk about how that affects our health and could it affect us getting dementia as well?
Yes, the research supports that caregivers are at a higher risk of developing dementia themselves than people who aren't caring. There are several reasons for that. There are many, many reasons for that. That also might be contributing because about 2/3 of people who are caregivers are women.
Mm-hmm.
1/3 are men. Yes, that is increasing, but still the majority of caregivers are family caregivers are women. And also 2/3 of people diagnosed with dementia are women. Is that a coincidence? That may be contributing because, so why are caregivers more at risk of Alzheimer's and dementia? Because they often, we've just said, neglect their own physical and emotional needs. The second big reason is because they're under constant stress. Stress produces the hormone cortisol, and the hormone cortisol actually directly damages cells in the hippocampus, which is our learning and memory warehouse, and that is the region of the brain that is most affected in Alzheimer's disease. So if that's getting damaged, that increases our risk of Alzheimer's. Loneliness doubles the risk of dementia, and we've said loneliness is an issue for caregivers. Depression increases the risk of dementia, and many caregivers do become depressed and anxious as well. Poor sleep, insomnia. I'm listing all the things that caregivers are prone to, which will increase their risk of dementia. Even just anxiety, persistent negative thinking, we found that in itself produces cortisol, which erodes brain function. Even though we're busy, some caregivers often say, look, but it's so boring and monotonous. And they're not, even though they're constantly engaging their brain and troubleshooting and problem solving, they're not stimulating their brain in a joyful, exciting way. And our brain does need variety and mental stimulation and, learning a musical instrument, a foreign language and doing arts and crafts. And caregivers are just going to go, well, there's no way. But it is really important to try and incorporate some of that because not stimulating our brain in a positive way is a risk factor. And then eating fast food, self-soothing with sugary snacks. That's a huge one. High blood pressure, which comes with stress, gaining excess body fat around the abdomen, which a lot of caregivers report. So it's all these things just add up to contribute to caregivers being at a high risk of dementia.
Yeah, well, a lot of times as the disease progresses, things get more sedentary. And
That's
so,
right. That
and,
too.
and so, the caregiver will just like, okay, because it almost feels like a calm, even though it's not,
Yes,
because you're not rushing around. And, you talked about the negative thinking. I think that's so important. Um, People still need to feel purposeful. And even though they're caring for someone and they know that's their purpose, it's a different type of purpose if you haven't incorporated joy in it.
that's right. And if you haven't chosen it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an excellent point, because there always is a choice. But I think, again, with stigma and what we've been taught, we haven't been taught it's an option, that there is still joy to be had and to be
mm,
found and to be creative. And what I found was that it looks very different than what it used to. What used to
yes,
bring me joy was probably bigger and more grandiose, and now it's just the really simple little things: a glint in the eye, a giggle, a laugh, a touch, a kiss, a hug, the beauty of whatever you're looking at together, or just sitting in silence being comfortable. Those outweighed everything,
mm,
in the long run. And those things are in our lives all the time. But in our fast paced life,
yeah,
we're cherry picking the big things and putting value, and I think not seeing those smaller items. And that's one of the things that I love with your books, because you talk about all of life, and everything that is possible.
and it's a real skill that I think it should be taught. I don't know where you teach it, but it's a skill, an essential life skill, an enriching, fulfilling life skill to know how to look for joy
And I think
in,
it should be taught in kindergarten. Start
yeah,
there.
but
And
in kindergarten, children know it instinctively. They are, because joy is to be found in the present moment,
yep.
not in the past, not in the future. Well, yes, you can reminisce, and that can bring joy, and you can think about, what you're looking forward to. That will bring joy, but the greatest joy is just appreciating the present moment. The
Yep.
excitement of that new rose, the first snowflakes, the sun coming out after days of rain, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the gentle breeze against your face, all those things are absolutely beautiful if we pause to notice them.
Yeah. Harry Urban, who's been living with dementia for about 20 years, um, said, I like to relax before I got dementia. Just sit and relax with me.
Mm.
Smell the roses, feel the breeze on your face and the sun penetrating your skin, and just relax. But I think we just don't think that we have time to
No.
squeeze that in, because it's not a priority. And it really is something that we have to learn how to prioritize for ourselves. And I wish that that was something that would come from the doctors, you know,
Yes.
in, when that diagnosis hits, saying, yes, you will now be caring for somebody, but you still need to care for yourself. And that person you're caring for, depending on where they are in the diagnosis process, they want to help. They want to reduce the
Yes.
stress. They want to be able to brighten your day. So how can that happen?
Mm.
And some things they might be able to do, other things, it might be that ambiguous loss of things that they lose. But some of it, I think, is setting up a routine. If it's like you used to dance,
Yeah.
then start working that in, and it becomes a pattern, for people. And that could be adaptive, from standing up to sitting down to pinky dancing,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
as
Even
things
just listening
change.
to music.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about that. Singing.
Yep. And there's such great statistics about
Mm.
the power of music, the power of art. And I think we've been told that, well, they can't learn anything new, they
Oh,
can't do any art. And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, they can.
Yes.
And the creative outlet for that, which is good for us as care partners as
Mm,
well. But again, sometimes it can be deterred because of lack of funds, lack of
yes.
time, lack of interest. I mean, all of those things have to be pulled together. And how do we support that? Because a lot of people would spend the money if they really felt the results would be there. But when we have that negative thought, like you were
Yep.
talking earlier, it's not going to work. It's not, no.
Yep. We make time. We always make time for what we think is most important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our life choices are based on our values. So if people really recognize the value of this, they will find time for it, and they'll let go of the things that they realize aren't bringing joy,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just doing because they've never questioned and thought they've had to do all the time.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Um, do you have some like top strategies for individuals, just to kind of summarize what we've talked about in terms of how to care for themselves and reduce some stressors?
Yes, I actually do. I run workshops. I speak about how to turn stress into success, and I teach people 3 key principles of managing stress. And the first principle is 80% of stress management is self-management. In other words, managing what's going on inside you, not outside you. People think, look, if I could just change, the situation out there, if I could just have this and this and this. No, change how you perceive the situation rather than trying to change the person you're caring for or a specific circumstance. Look, if you can change the external circumstance, by all means do, but a lot of the time we can't. And this is really important because we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We see things through the filter of everything else that's going on in our lives. I can walk into a situation one day and handle it perfectly calmly and effectively. I can walk into the same situation another day and be totally stressed out by it because of the state I'm in before I walk in. So there could be total chaos going on around you, and you may not be able to do much to influence the state of the things out there, but you can always influence the state of things in your own mind and body. So that's just the first thing to recognize. The second principle of stress management is that stress management begins before stress strikes. And that's about the importance of building up mental and physical resilience, through self-care, which we've just talked about. And I know the biggest complaint is I'm too busy for self-care, but it makes such a profound difference to everything we do. We have to live to give, because it's false economy not to look after ourselves, because when we aren't at our best, we don't perform at our best. Things take longer. Things don't bring us joy. We don't relate to others very well. And we certainly don't think at our best. We're less able to problem solve. But unfortunately, in our current culture, we often mistake self-care for being selfish, when it can't be selfish because it enables us to give more. What do people remember most about us? It isn't what we say. It isn't even what we do. It's how we make them feel. And nowhere is this more evident than with someone who has dementia. As you've said, if I may quote you, facts fray, but feelings stay. So the better I feel, the better I make others feel. And as Einstein said, example isn't just another way to teach, it's the only way to teach. So when we are energetic and we're feeling joy, that just radiates out and the other person will feel joy. So we just have to keep reminding ourselves the greatest gift we can give to the people we care about is our zest, our energy, our enthusiasm, our creativity, joy, and most importantly, our ability to be fully present with them. Who we are and how we show up is more important than what we do. When I was feeling unhappy, Dad would be subdued and lacked interest in doing things. When I was happy, he would sense that and it would lift his spirits as well. And the third really important principle, don't believe everything you think. because sometimes our stress is exacerbated or even caused by the conversations we have in our heads about a situation rather than the situation itself. I love Mark Twain used to say, I've suffered many tragedies in my life, but only a few of them actually happened. You know, it was thinking about what might happen that caused the stress, not the thing itself. So I can't recommend strongly enough, just focus on what you have to do right now. Not tomorrow, just right now, because stress actually dissipates in the focused doing. Focusing on the present moment and not trying to predict what may or may not happen in the future, because we can't control anything. We can't influence anything except the present moment.
Yeah.
And if I can go on, but I won't if you don't want to.
No, please.
I've actually, from that, I've created the acronym LESS stress. LESS stress is 10 letters, and it stands for the 10 steps to eliminate stress, well, at least to reduce it significantly. So the first one, L, less stress. Look at things differently. You know, how can you view this situation so that it empowers you rather than depresses you? So Dad doesn't want to do, say, something I've planned. Okay, let's use this as an opportunity. What's going on? To learn more about what is going on for him. What can I learn about me and the situation? And maybe if I phrase it differently, you know, what is it about the situation? What is it about the thing that he doesn't want to do? And sometimes just asking a few questions, I realize it was just the way I phrased it, or he would like to do it, but just not right now because he's thirsty or he's hungry or he's got to go to the bathroom. And unless you pause and take things a little bit further, you might not discover that. And sometimes the solutions, just by looking at things differently, are so much simpler than we ever could have imagined. So that's the first one. And the L also stands for laugh more often. And I spoke about us having a laughter box, I think the last time we spoke. The E stands for evaluate how much something really matters. When something happens that I'm about to get upset about or feel stressed about or anxious about, I ask myself, okay, how much does this really matter? I ask myself two questions. I ask myself, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be a 10 anxiety for me? And that is answering yes to, has somebody died or am I pregnant? Now, if the answer to, you know, is no to those two questions, then it's not a 10. And just, you know, just asking ourselves the question, how bad is this really? We start to engage our forebrain, and that takes us out of our amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain, and just having that curiosity and questioning reduces our stress. And then the next question to ask ourselves is, how much will this matter in a year, in a month, in a week, in a day even? And we often realize, you know what, this doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. So that's the E in less. The S stands for still your mind, whether that's through meditation, whether that's through just focusing on our breathing. We spoke about breath work last time. A really powerful one is, I just find something, even just for a few seconds, just look at something, whether it's nice if it's nature, but even just looking at a point on the wall or a candle or a figurine or you know, the chandeliers, just pause, or even your hand. Look at the palm of your hand as though you've never seen it before, and just look without thinking, without judging, without running an internal commentary. Or another powerful one, close your eyes and just listen. And just notice all the things that are all, you know, the chirping birds, the wind, the rattling window, the buzz of the air conditioner. Just noticing things that are going on around us that we never notice because we never actually stop to listen. Or another really powerful one is close your eyes, focus on your hands or your feet, and notice the energy in your hands or your feet. How do I know when I close my eyes that how am I aware of my hands and feet? And sometimes you're aware of a tingling or an energy or even a coldness or something. And just that awareness has an incredible power to calm us down. The next S, so less, double S, stay in the present moment. and stop multitasking, which we've covered. The S in stress, the next word is share it with a friend. Loneliness doubles the risk of dementia. Loneliness hammers our immune system. An incredible study, this was done where people were taken out to a mountain range and they were asked to judge the steepness of the hills. And in the first phase of the study, they were taken out on their own. And then in a second phase, they were allowed to bring a person with them. Now, that friend had to stay socially distanced. In Australia, that was 1.5 metres away, looking in the opposite direction, not allowed to help or speak or anything. They were just there. And whenever the people were asked to judge the steepness of the hill with somebody present, they always judged it about 15% less steep, less difficult to climb than when they were looking at it on their own. That is a stunning finding, that the mere presence of social support transforms our perception of our physical reality.
Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah. When we feel supported, obstacles appear more surmountable, success feels more attainable. So, that is just so important. The T in stress, thank people, just be thankful in general. So we've spoken a lot about that, whether it's a gratitude journal or just starting and ending the day with just a reflection on what you feel grateful for. I used to play the alphabet game with Dad, like when we were driving or when we were waiting or when we was getting impatient or just agitated for no reason or sundowning. I would say, okay, let's play the alphabet game. What's something you feel grateful for that starts with A? And it might be the apple I had an hour ago. What's something that you feel great that starts with B? Barbara that lives down the road because she's such a lovely person. It was just such a beautiful game to play.
I've never heard of that with
I made it up. I just made it
I
up.
like that. I like that.
Yeah. So the R in stress, read my books. I'm being facetious, but seriously, read people have just said they're so helpful. But the R stands for refresh and recharge. Ask yourself right now, if you're listening, what brings you joy? What revitalizes you? Don't think about, yes, but I don't have time. Just forget if you had a magic wand, what would it be? Would it be reading a novel? Having a bubble bath, having a facial, having a manicure, walking in nature, doing gardening, just doing some window shopping, whatever it would be, going on a hike. So write those things down and then give yourself permission to do it. And if you just write it down as an intention, but you've got to schedule something at least once a week, something lovely that you really look forward to once a week, but also something once a day, just for you, even if it's just a few minutes, in the garden. And the minute you write it down as an intention, the way will open up. It's just the way life works, is what I found. The E in stress stands for take exercise snacks, because carers often say, I don't have time to exercise. Okay, so just a minute, maybe your the person you're caring for is taking a short nap. Just, run around the block for a minute or 2 or 3, or just run around your backyard or run up and down the stairs. Just a few minutes of exercise here and there throughout the day will add up. So exercising and remembering that sitting is the new smoking for both of you. You've heard that expression, sitting is the new smoking.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and there's so many reasons, I won't go into them, but it increases inflammation in our body, and inflammation is the root cause of just about everything, heart disease, including dementia. So, sit as little as possible. The last 2 S's, S, sleep. Get enough sleep. 7 to 9 hours is what the average adult needs. And remember that after 17 hours of wakefulness, that would be 7 a.m. to midnight, our brain operates as though we had a blood alcohol reading of 0.05%. That is, in Australia, that is above the legal limit for driving. So after 17 hours of being awake, it's like we're drunk. We're just not performing. So just prioritize getting enough sleep. And
that's a statistic I've never heard before talking to you. And I just find that fascinating.
Yeah. Yep. So remember that. And the last S, spend time in nature, which we spoke about last time. But nature is healing physically, psychologically, emotionally. It lowers our blood pressure. It strengthens our immune system. It improves our mood. You know, it's a treatment for depression. So for both of you, spend time in nature. It's just so wonderful. So that's my formula for managing stress, the 3 principles and the 10 steps. And it's easy to remember because it's the acronym, less stress.
I love acronyms. I think they're really, really
Yeah.
helpful. Well, I want to talk about your book here, NeuroSlimming, Let Your Brain Change Your Body, and how that can really help us, care for ourselves. So tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it, and who's your ideal candidate for this?
My ideal candidate is the person who uses food to manage their emotions. Mm-hmm. Because so much of eating is, if you're carrying excess body fat, is emotional eating. We don't eat because we're hungry. Well, eating, when I say, the key to shedding excess body fat without dieting or deprivation is eat when you're hungry, don't eat when you're not hungry. Mm-hmm. But so many people eat when they're sad, angry, bored, lonely, in love, out of love, procrastinating, lonely, celebrating. It's just endless. But if we really tune in and ask ourselves, when you want to reach for food, and so many carers say, they just use food is their joy, their outlet, but it's not really, because then they feel bad about themselves because they're putting on weight and then they feel worse and more sluggish and more tired. So it's not a solution. But I just say, the key is, if you're about to reach for food, ask yourself, am I really hungry? Or do I just want to change how I'm feeling? And if you're hungry, eat. Mm-hmm. But if you realize it's because I'm feeling exhausted or frustrated or angry, or I don't even know how I'm feeling, but I just don't like it, so I just want to distract myself from whatever's going on, the solution is just, and this is such an incredible life skill, is feel your feelings. Don't feed your feelings. And this was something many, many years ago. I was an emotional eater myself, which is why I resonate so much with this. Learning to feel my feelings is probably one of the most important life skills, because if you can just, and when I say feel your feelings, people are afraid that they'll either cry and never stop, or feeling their feelings means smacking somebody across the face. That's not feeling our feelings. That's acting out our feelings. Yep. Feeling our feelings is just sitting there and tuning into your body and asking myself, just what am I even feeling here? What is it? What's the discomfort? And I recognize often I used to think I was angry and I'd feel it like a ton of bricks on my chest. And then and all you do is you sit there with the discomfort. It's not comfortable, but you realize it's just uncomfortable. And you can just be with that discomfort. And so often, if I just sat with it for a few minutes, the anger dissipated and it became sadness. And what I really realized was that I was sad. And then I just allowed myself to be sad. And sometimes I cried. Sometimes I just sat there. And then it would just dissolve. And it would be like I'd had an internal shower and I'd be okay. And I wouldn't need to eat. Mm-hmm. So really learn to tune in and listen to your body. And remember, people say, no, but I overeat because the food tastes so good. No, that's not what studies have found. We don't overeat because something tastes too good. We overeat because we're either not paying attention and we're just eating mindlessly, so we don't even realize how much we're eating, or what we're eating isn't satisfying. So we keep eating in the hope that it will eventually satisfy us. Or we're eating because we're not hungry. We're trying to soothe an emotion. So look, the book is more detailed, but that is some of the main crux in the book dealing with.
Well, and when you're dealing with somebody with dementia and maybe they're having some angst or anger, or they want to go home or whatever, we always talk about distraction. And it really is distracting us from the crux
Yeah.
of what it is. I know I'm an emotional eater, and I'll be frustrated. It's like I just need a break. So then I'll make myself
Yes.
something to eat. If it, if it's popcorn or whatever it is, it really doesn't make any difference. But
Yeah, that's right. But it's
it's
never
a
going to be broccoli. I'll bet you don't overeat on broccoli.
no, you're
You don't
right.
emotionally eat broccoli or Brussels sprouts. We always reach for the junk food and the sugary food. And all you need to do is give yourself permission to do
Mhm.
nothing. You don't
Yep.
have, I think that's why people reach for food. It's like, well, I feel guilty if I'm not doing anything. So
Mhm.
I'll go and have something to eat. Then at least I'm not wasting time. No, just do nothing. It's absolutely okay. And in fact, it's necessary. And you'll find that the less you reach for food to manage your emotions, the less you'll need to, because you'll just be so in tuned. And the more you feel your feelings, the less intimidating and frightening they will become. And they'll almost become your friend and your guidance system, because you'll be going, okay, why am I feeling like this? What is that showing to me? How can I do something differently? And you just emotions are a natural part of life. It is just normal that we're going to be feeling upset or angry some of the time. We can't always be feeling joyful, and that's fine.
Yeah. And I think, like with social media, everyone's trying to project this perfect
Mm,
life out there now. I think that's done so much damage for people trying to project something and then having those feelings. I think that almost adds to the guilt and the discomfort
yeah.
of of whatever it is that they're going through. I mean, we've never had so much eating disorders and
Yes.
obesity and um, at all different ages. And it emotions aren't something that is openly talked about, and
No.
we give people permission to feel. And I'm right with you. I like I always say, you don't wake up in the morning and stay in one mood the whole day. You're gonna get in the car and someone's gonna cut you off, and you're gonna go, what are they doing? And that's normal to do, but it doesn't last. You get past it, and yet we have this expectation. Everything's supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to be in control. We're supposed to be smiling. No one needs to see this other side of us when everyone has that other side.
Yeah.
And so we've made it non like it's not permissible,
Mm.
to show that. It's not proper to show that. And I just think it has done so much damage to so many people on so many levels. So I'm glad you're talking about that whole emotional eating piece, because I think it affects so many. And then,
Yes.
you coming over from Australia, you saw our upsized foods here in the US.
Every meal lasts me 2 meals. I'm terrific. People go, oh, food's expensive. No, it's not, because one meal lasts me two or three.
Yep. Yeah, and we don't really realize that, because again, it's happened slowly over time,
Mm.
and we don't, it's normal now here. And so then people like, well, it's here, it's a meal, I should eat it, or and we don't stop ourselves. Or I know I don't always, sometimes I do, but not as much as I should,
Well,
you
they're
know.
so obliging here. All the restaurants, if I don't finish this, can I take it home? Well, back to my hotel. Yes, of course you can. So
Mhm.
it's like, great. I don't have to go out and find something tomorrow. I can just eat in my hotel room what my leftovers from the day before.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of people that don't like the leftovers, I mean,
Oh, they
that's
taste better.
that's
They
an
sometimes
excuse
even
too.
taste better heated up.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes for sure. Um, well, there's a lot of midlife obesity. And I mean, but then I look at our children. I mean, I look at your book and just think, oh my gosh, everybody needs to read your book, because it's life lessons that aren't being taught, that are so critically important. And even when you were talking about, knowing that you don't have to eat, it tells you, okay,
Mm,
I'm stressed over something. That's one of those identifiers that we're not identifying with, which is a real key factor for people. And I don't think we connect those dots at
no,
all,
no.
with this. Um, so what are some of your thoughts about midlife obesity? Because a lot of times that's when people hit kind of these caring roles, and, more stress is added on, even though they might have children who have, flown the coop and are off to college and things like that. But I mean, nowadays you can have, there is no family structure that's
Yeah.
that's basic anymore. Everything is so mixed up. So maybe I should have you define what you feel midlife is, because that seems to be changing in terms of perception as well. So let's start with that, and then we can kind of dive in a little more.
Well, the medical model defines midlife as 40 to 60. And obesity during this time actually doubles our risk of developing dementia. So it's all happening at the worst possible time. And yes, it's in one way, it's a very complicated disease to treat, but it's because we've been going about it the wrong way. My book talks not about what to eat. It does mention it a little bit, of course, but what's far more important is why and how we're eating. Because, as I said, if we only eat when we're hungry and stop eating when we're satisfied, our body, there's no animal in the wild that's obese, because they follow their own instincts. They don't need to do genetic testing and, all this whiz-bang technology and monitoring to know what they should eat. We all know instinctively. However, advertising and social pressures and emotions and stress, everything drives us to eat when we're not actually hungry, and drives us to override and not even hear our internal bodily signals. So the first thing, and I suggest if people set out with a weight loss goal, is to actually lose the word lose. Let me ask, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But firstly, let me ask you a question, Laurie. What is your knee-jerk response when you hear the word loss? Do you feel energized and uplifted, or do you feel sad and resistant when you hear the word loss?
Probably second. The sad and and resistance.
Yeah. We all resist loss. And subconsciously, that includes weight loss, because whenever we lose something, what do we try and do? Find it again. And this is so often our language, because our brain is very sensitive to language, and our subconscious mind is very literal. Whenever we talk about loss and losing something, there is an internal resistance. And this is why so many, like 95% of people who do lose weight, put it back on again. Instead of talking about weight loss, losing weight, talk about gaining life. Set a goal that is framed positively rather than negatively. So instead of saying, okay, my goal is to lose X number of pounds, say, every day I'm getting stronger, healthier, and feeling fabulous. Or I am a size, whatever size clothing you'd like to be. I'm letting go of what I don't need. Or you're going, I have a body I love. I have a body that's full of energy and vitality and great health. Write one of those statements as your goal, or come up with your own goal, but you must frame it in a positive way, so that when you say that statement, it immediately makes you feel better, and there is no subconscious resistance to achieving that goal. And secondly, what's absolutely critical is to have a clear, compelling reason for wanting to achieve your goal. I'll quote Friedrich Nietzsche. I love quoting famous old people. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "He who has a powerful why can conquer any unknown how." In other words, if you have a powerful, compelling, lasting reason for wanting to shed excess body fat, for wanting to feel better and having a body you love, you will find a way. Where there's a why, there's a way. So before you even embark on any strategy to manage your eating, to eat healthier, to make better food choices, ask yourself, what is my reason? And it's so that I feel better, whatever your reason happens to be, so that I'm happier, so that I am a better carer, so that I feel more confident in myself. Whatever your reason is, write it down. And that will drive you. And each time you give yourself an answer. So, why do you want to shed excess body fat? So that I look better. Well, why do you want to look better? So that I feel more confident. Why do you want to feel more confident? You just keep asking yourself why until you start to cry. In other words, it's got to be an emotional reason. It can't just be, well, because my doctor said I have high blood pressure and I'm a ticking time bomb and I'm going to have a heart attack soon. Fear can initiate people to start a goal, but fear will not sustain you in your journey to achieve your goal. But joy will. A positive reason will.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. Ask yourself until you cry, because then you've got to the heart of it, and it's
That's right.
not that superficial, just easy answer. Okay, I answered it. She'll leave me alone now, type thing. It's really, really getting to it. And again, it's dealing with that emotion of being honest with yourself, which is super healthy. Yeah.
And a really, really powerful way. So many people have reported back that this is one of the most powerful things that has helped them, shed excess body fat, because a lot of people loathe their body. They hate their body. They hate, how it's become and what it looks like. And I just say, and they say, I can't. I said, you've got to really love your body. Well, I can't. Every night before you go to sleep, thank every part of your body. So, when I go to sleep, I thank my feet for walking in those shoes all day. I thank my back for holding me up. I thank my hands for all the things they're able to do. Or you just don't even have to give a reason. I thank my feet. I thank my legs. I thank my knees. I thank my hips. I thank my stomach. I thank my chest. I thank my heart. I thank my lungs. But do it slower and just focus on every body part. And you don't even have to say it. Just feel gratitude or be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And just be aware that, I'm really lucky that I have a body that enables me to do all these things.
Yep. Yeah, we forget the basics so often.
And you'll sleep better too, going to saying that in your mind. And the final thing, tying back to where we started this conversation, one of the biggest drivers of excess body fat, and by the way, what's important, and I did mention this before in our previous interview, but I'll mention it again, is not how much you weigh on the scales, but it's your waist circumference. So for a woman, aim to be 80 cent. I should have looked this up. 80 centimeters waist circumference, and for a man, no more than 94 centimeters, because that's when you start to increase your risk of chronic disease. That's when it's an indication that you're starting to build up what's known as visceral fat, which is fat around and within your abdominal organs, and they produce inflammatory chemicals called cytokines, which damage all of our body, including our brain. So, there's a saying that, the bigger your waist, the smaller your brain. So that's where you got to, that's what you need to measure if you want to measure anything at all. And the biggest driver of carrying fat around your abdomen is stress. So if you do all those things that we talked about to reduce stress, that will be a major step in also shedding excess body fat and just be living longer, stronger, healthier, and happier, and being a more effective, confident, caring, present carer.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned the visceral fat. Are there other types of fats, and will one come off faster than the other, or are we stuck with visceral fat once we've accumulated it?
No, you can get rid of visceral fat, and some of the major ways. So the good news is, yes, you can get rid of visceral fat. That's the fat around your abdomen. So within your abdomen, around your abdominal organs like your liver and your pancreas and your heart, and also infiltrating those organs. That's what visceral fat is, and that is the dangerous fat. The other type of fat is subcutaneous fat, and that is the fat under your skin, along your, in the fat around your hips is not dangerous fat. You don't have to worry about that. The fat around your thighs, your arms, that is not dangerous fat. You don't have to worry about that. It's like real estate. You'll appreciate this, Laurie. What's important is location, location, location. So as I said, people don't necessarily like the fat around their hips, but it is not dangerous fat. So I don't worry about that at all. It's just the fat around your abdomen. And the best ways to eliminate that are to eliminate stress and short bouts of intense physical exercise, which we spoke about last time. So, high intensity interval training is great for shedding visceral fat and eliminating sugar and refined carbohydrates.
Okay, great. Well, and I love that you talked about the snack exercises, because I
Yes,
thought,
yes.
at first I thought, well, am I supposed to have a snack? No, she's talking about just
That
do a little bit. Just,
exercise snack instead of snacking on food,
yep,
snack on exercise.
yep, yep. And that's something that never occurred to me at all, And
Yeah.
so, gosh, this has just, again, been such a great conversation. I appreciate all the time and energy and work you are putting in, not only just to being on the show, but the time and energy you put into your books. I mean, your speaking, your clinic work, your collaboration with others and networking. It's just so absolutely critical to get this information out, and you do it in such an easy fashion to listen to. Not all
Thank you.
doctors have great bedside manners and understand the nitty gritty, and you do that in such a easy fashion to be able to take it all in. So thank you so much. Is there anything that
Thank
we
you.
haven't covered that we should?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I think just remembering that who you are, how you show up is more important than what you're actually doing. Just being fully present, paying full attention to the person, just being with them. That is the greatest gift.
Mhm. I agree. I agree. In wrapping up, again, we've been talking with Dr. Helena Popovic from Australia, and she is just an incredible person, as you could see from this interview or hear if you're listening to the podcast. But check her out. Again, she's got her websites, drhelenapopovic.com. AdventurePreventsDementia.com is her other website. You can find her on Facebook at helena.popovic, Instagram on Get Healthy with Dr. Helena. She's on YouTube as Dr. Helena Popovic, and same on LinkedIn. So easy to get a hold of. And again, I would highly recommend her books. You're not going to be disappointed. And, feel free to share this episode, go back and watch the other two that we did. And again, share those. That's one of the easiest things we can do, is be a giver of hope by sharing what we learn. Don't keep it to yourself. And I think that one of your letters in your acronym for your
Yes, yes.
stress too, and it's so important. So again, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Laurie.